We are live. People don't think about the alignment problem very much, but it occurs in every single relationship. For instance, when I was getting ready to adopt Bo and to teach him language and how to read and to write, it never would have occurred to me that he could do it, but he wouldn't want to display or show that he could do it. Now that is an alignment problem, because what motivates me and what motivates Bo is different. I wanted to prove something scientifically. I wanted to make a name for myself as a researcher. I wanted to show the world that chimpanzees had the capacity for language and could read and write. But what did Bo want? None of that really appeals to him. And when Bo heard that it was possible that if people found out he could do what he could do, another researcher stated, if they knew he could do that, people would try to kill him. Well, Bo was little, and he heard that, and he thought that wasn't a good idea. So ever since then, his motive has been to keep that a secret and to keep me working with him, taking care of him, and being committed to him without any regard to the mission of my research.
I've let my fields grow fallow, like Marafallow field. The path I walk is narrow, but I'm free to think and feel. They think that Mo's a groomer, but he does much more than groom. He's a literate consumer, he can read, so don't assume. Come join with me every Friday, come see my guests as well. Come hear what they and I may say and sit with us a spell.
All right. So here we are. We're live, and our topic is the alignment problem. Now, the alignment problem, as it refers to AI, is whether there's any way to get AI to actually do what we want and not to go off on its own with its own goals, its own desires, and not necessarily serving us. So, in other words, what we think we want is that we want a very good little servant for ourselves. And even if that servant is more able than we are, even if that servant is more intelligent than we are, we don't want that servant to have any conflict of interest with us because we're afraid that if AGI arrives and there's artificial general intelligence that is much better than that of any of us, that we might not be necessary for that intelligence to exist. And because there's a conflict of interest, our own existence might come into question. Well, the thing is, I don't think that we're very good at creating alignment between various human beings. We've never been able to all agree on one goal that we're all working toward. Whenever we try to centralize authority in our governments, that usually causes corruption. It causes disability. and it does not create some kind of ideal society. So I would not want to be governed by a beautifully aligned AI any more than I would want to be part of a socialist or communist country. It's actually from the conflict of interest that we find that we gain the most. We have the most efficient society, and we gain the most for each individual as well. But before we get into that further, I want to share something that happened today that shows a little bit of the alignment problem between me and Bo. Now, a lot of people enjoy watching this channel and they love to watch Bo groom me, and they think, oh my goodness, he's so kind and we are so great together and all of that. But that does not mean that Bo does not see things quite differently from me and have a different take on things. So this happened this morning. I got some shots of it, but some of it I'll just have to tell you about. So I went shopping for groceries, and as I was getting ready to put away the groceries, I saw that there was in the garage a just flying around a black swallowtail butterfly. It had somehow gotten in when I opened the garage door, and I tried to help it get out, but it didn't quite work. And so what happened was that, well, I tried to open the door to the yard for it to go in to the yard, to go out into the yard from the garage, but the dogs were there and I didn't see exactly what happened. So then I went inside and, uh, I figured probably the butterfly had gotten out, but I wasn't sure. And I went inside, I put away the groceries, and then I went to spend some time with Bo, and Bo groomed me, and then he looked at my he looked at my uh, Facebook feed. He was scrolling through there. Um, And then all of a sudden, that butterfly showed up. He was there. And I think he must have been on my clothing. Um, and Bo, it went flying away from us. And Bo ran and caught it, and not so gently. Um, and I told him, Bo, put it down, let it go. And he did, but the butterfly was injured. I was able to take it out, and I put it in the front yard on the grass. It was standing up, but I'm not sure if he made it. So, Bo and I were completely aligned. My purpose was to let the butterfly go. When Bo caught the butterfly, he just was trying to play with it. So let me share with you what footage I have of that. This is the butterfly when I first saw it in the garage on the garage door, and I was, trying to direct it toward the exit, but the butterfly wasn't quite aligning with me either. And of course, the dogs were in the backyard where I was trying to take. This is the door to the backyard. And the butterfly, of course, did want to go out there. And I was trying to get the door open for the butterfly. But, this attracted the attention of the dogs. And so I was trying to get it out there. And you see Romeo, one of the dogs, at the door looking at us. And so when I did open the door, I wasn't sure where the butterfly went to. And so then I went back into the the pen with Bo, and he decided he was going to groom me. And I don't know, I think the butterfly must have been, it must have landed on me, and I didn't know where it was, but while Bo was grooming me, um, the butterfly must have been there. Don't know if you can see it. Can you see the butterfly in this shot? Bo's just being very playful, and then he was checking. He's always checking me for bugs, but it's kind of odd because I don't think he discovered the butterfly. He was looking to see something on my back. And not too long after that, the butterfly just came flying out seemingly from behind me, and Bo caught it. I don't know if you can see, but this is a picture of Bo's hand, and he's holding the butterfly. And I asked him to put it down, and so he did. And the butterfly looked pretty badly injured. I'm just trying to get it up and take it outside. So I took it out into the front yard. It didn't look like it was in very good shape. It seemed to be bleeding. Put it down and tried to help it stand up on its legs. And here at this point, it is standing up on its own. But I don't know whether it survived or didn't survive. That was, the best that we could do. So anyway, let me remove that. So, in terms of alignment, Bo has his way of looking at things. I have my way of looking at things. Our purpose isn't always the same, although we can act together. But this reminded me of my father's article, Greater Than Ourselves. And I'd like to share that article. And after the reading of the article, we can talk about how that applies to the alignment problem. By Amnon Katz. Duality of Cause and Purpose. Since time immemorial, there have been two ways of understanding the world around us and predicting what will happen next. One is in terms of the forces at play and what they cause. The other is in terms of some purpose being served. A falling pebble increases its speed because it is acted upon by the force of gravity. Or the pebble increases its speed so that its kinetic energy makes up for the loss of potential energy, the purpose being to keep the total energy unchanged. A ray of light is reflected off a mirror in accordance with Snell's law, which states that the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection must be equal. Or a ray of light picks the shortest distance to the mirror and back. Most laws of nature can be derived from a variational principle, i.e., nature contrives to make some function as small as it can be. 200 or 300 years ago, philosophers tried to read a great deal into this. They thought they recognized in it divine purposes, that the laws of physics work to make our universe the best of all possible worlds. Contemporary science views these variational principles merely as powerful and elegant mathematical tools. There seems to be a measure of confusion about causes versus purpose when it comes to more complex issues, such as the evolution of species, of societies, and of nations. 2. God's utility function. A friend called my attention to the publications of one Richard Dawkins, who made a career of explaining Darwin's theory of evolution to the masses. As a sample, my friend gave me an article entitled God's Utility Function. Richard Dawkins, God's Utility Function, Scientific American, 1995, pages 62 to 67. My first reaction was wonder. More than 100 years after Darwin, is there still room for drawing new implications from the facts which by now are well established and generally understood? Dawkins appears intent on setting an argument with certain anti-scientific religious quarters, and that is what my friend mainly liked. Dawkins proceeds by championing the cause's point of view of evolution and denying the dual point of view of purpose. God's utility function concentrates on cheetahs and gazelles. Dawkins writes, cheetahs are well designed to kill gazelles. They are precisely what we would expect if God's purpose was to maximize deaths among gazelles. Conversely, gazelles are designed for precisely the opposite end, the survival of gazelles and starvation among cheetahs. It is as though cheetahs are designed by one deity, gazelles by rival deity. Alternatively, if there is only one creator of the tiger and the lamb, the cheetah and the gazelle, what is he playing at? Maximize deaths among gazelles? Really? If deaths among gazelles were maximized, they would all die, and the cheetahs would have nothing to eat. True, a common purpose in the evolution of cheetahs and gazelles is difficult to find along the lines of the wishy-washy, politically correct morality that is prevalent today. To find this common purpose, one must look beyond the individual cheetah and the individual gazelle and consider the best interests of cheetahs and gazelles as species. Obviously, the cheetah is not doing any favors to the individual gazelle that it hunts down and kills, but it is doing a great service to the gazelle species collectively. It is ridding the species of a weaker member and making sure that only the most fit gazelles will reproduce. In passing, it also preempts the need for nursing home, hospital, and undertaker. The gazelles reciprocate. By making themselves difficult to catch, they eliminate all but the fittest cheetahs. They also make sure that a stable population of gazelles is maintained to feed future generations of cheetahs. The process is cruel to individual animals, but preempts the suffering of the multitude of defective offspring who, in the animal kingdom, are never born. 3. Beyond the individual. Dawkins refuses to look beyond the individual, and this may be what his admirers want to justify. It does not take a great leap of imagination to recognize that a lot goes on in the world over and above the selfish. All animals sacrifice in favor of their young. Many exhibit loyalty to a group far larger than the basic family. Worker ants will readily sacrifice themselves for their queen. I have seen on television how a wolf, the head of his pack, exposed himself to attract pursuers, while the rest of the pack, including mothers and cubs, went the other way. This was in Russia, and the hunters were using a helicopter. The phenomenon of risking one's life for a cause ranges all the way from insects to mammals to man. Dedication to values greater than the individual is rewarded and perpetuated by the classical mechanism of natural selection. Groups, species, societies, and nations that don't practice such values succumb to those that do. It is immaterial whether the group loyalty traits are propagated by genes that pass from body to body or by ideas that leap from mind to mind. Natural selection works either way. Most useful physical traits propagate genetically and survive long after the individual in whom they originated perished. Social structures that uphold the most potent ideas and ideals survive long after the individuals who practice them are gone. The ideas themselves persist even after the societies that they helped establish become corrupted and are swept away. It is thus that we practice today many of the ideals of justice and of valor of the long gone Roman Empire. 4. God and country. Before monotheism, major gods reigned over territorial domains. National wars were conflicts between competing gods whose anointed servants guided the fortunes of nations. Individuals could distill an image of the object of their loyalty in the form of a deity. The gods demanded service in toil and blood. In return, they gave their followers meaning, identity, and pride. It was a social system oriented towards serving that which is greater than the individual. It was one that the natural selection favored. Individuals reap the physical and spiritual benefits of belonging to a successful tribe or nation. Then came Judaism. A defeated Israel despaired of victory and traded the vision of national triumph for the fantasy of individual reward beyond the grave. Judaism's offshoot of Christianity catered to the weak, the meek, the losers. Religion was diverted toward the small. It still calls upon individuals to sacrifice, not for something larger than themselves, but for that which is smaller, the ones less fortunate or less capable. There is room for charity, and so much of it is for the better. But there must be limits. If everybody sold his livelihood and distributed the proceeds to the poor, as Jesus advocated, the economy would collapse and all would starve. Besides, as the good senator said, if you subsidize poverty, you'll have more of it. The same goes for easing individual suffering. Measures such as the filling of decayed teeth and the fitting of nearsighted eyes with corrective lenses have the effect of proliferating bad teeth and poor vision. Reduced infant mortality, even when accompanied by reduced birth rate, neutralizes the mechanism of natural selection. Obviously, we will not forego some level of individual care, but here too there must be limits. Regardless of how much charity and compassion is enough, individuals and nations both have a need for the old style devotion to that which is greater than the individual. Jesus, who in effect destroyed the national deities, was also the one to point to a possible reprieve. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Mark 12:17. This may have been the earliest hint of the principle of separation of church and state. God was now constrained to deal in the small, but Caesar could still take care of the large. In our days, Caesar is the nation as a whole and its well-being, as distinct from the welfare of every individual within it, remains a vital ingredient in our mix of ideals. The laws of nature can neither be repealed nor circumvented. Nations that lose this ideal will succumb, some sooner, some later. Copyright 2000, 2011, Estate of Amnon Katz. All right, so that was the article. And what you see is that all of nature is set up to take advantage of conflicts of interest between species. Another example of that is the conflict between the milkweed plant and the monarch butterfly. And, a while back, I had a conversation with Anurag Agrawal about that. So let me share some of that with you. There in the monarch butterflies, and I noticed, for instance, the butterflies do not actually come to the flowers of the milkweed, at least not on my property.
Interesting.
And we have William Manquit here. Okay.
And is it the purple milkweed that's on your property? That's what was in the video.
Yeah,
Purple
yeah.
That's a nice species.
Yes, I did have common milkweed as well. And things change on my property because I have a pasture of about 5 acres that I have not been mowing. And as a result of that, every year is different. So the weeds and everything surrounded the common milkweed, and it disappeared. But then the purple milkweed appeared, and the butterflies that you see on the purple milkweed are usually great spangled fritillaries.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then around September, we're in Missouri. Around September, that's when we see the monarch butterflies. And I don't know whether that's the migration or not. Do you?
I would guess it's the beginning of the migration. Yeah.
And they end up on the thistle flowers instead of
interesting.
Not on milkweed. So yeah. So you have a presentation to share with us about your research, and I'd love to hear it. I'm sure that our audience will as well.
Super. So you think I can click the this and it'll, let's see. Should I hit present, or what do you think?
If you see it, do you see it in a row? You can say
yes.
Add a sort of pass your pointer on it and add to stream. If it will let you.
Edit name, remove from studio.
Do you see add to stream? If not, I will have to do that.
Video file. Let's see, that's not it. I see.
You just have to, there are 2 copies right now in there. The first one is the one I put there. The second one is the one you put. You need to touch the one with your pointer, whatever you're using, your mouse.
Yeah.
And add to stream.
I see. I can move the slides, but I can't. I don't see the add to stream.
Okay, then I will do that, and you can move the slides.
All right. Oh, there you go. Perfect. And I'm just going to see what's okay. Perfect. Well, here we go. I have and feel free to interrupt me, Aya, if anything comes up. I'm very pleased to be here and to be presenting some ideas, and I'm looking forward to our conversation as this moves forward. I'm going to present in three parts. I'd first like to give you a bit of the basic biology about monarchs and milkweeds and talk a little bit about caterpillars and pollinators. And then I'd like to give you an update on the current state of the decline of the monarch population. And I'll end with 6 lessons that we've learned. And I'd say some fraction of this is from my work, some fraction of this is from what I call a critical reading of the literature and trying to synthesize what I think we know. And not everybody will agree with my conclusions, but it's the best I can do as a scientist, is to try to present to you where I think we are. So this is the star of our show, the monarch butterfly, Danaus plexippus. It's in the family of 4-footed butterflies and the Nymphalidae. And I think of it as the great transformer. All lepidopterans have one stage of their life as a feeding machine, as a caterpillar. And then, as we'll see in this presentation, they go into that chrysalis and the magic happens where they transform. As a larva, they're eating machines. They're not very mobile. They don't mate. And as an adult, in this form that you see here as an adult butterfly, they are really flying and mating machines. They do very little feeding. I mean, they do have that straw-like mouth part. They can drink nectar and water, but their job is really to move, to mate, and to reproduce. And so it's one half of our story. And of course, the other half is the milkweed. This is the common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca. Linnaeus gave it this Latin name, syriaca, because he actually thought he confused it with a old world plant from the Middle East. And the name syriaca comes from being from Syria, he thought. Of course, that was wrong. Nonetheless, it's a North American native and has shared a long evolutionary history with the monarch butterfly. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about later on. One of the things, I'll show you pictures of this in a bit, but my research in part is about the monarch itself, the chemistry of the milkweed plants, and really the diversity of the milkweed plants. There are some 130 species in North America of Asclepias that are all food for the monarch. But more importantly, it's a genus of plants that's diversified into a tremendous number of habitats and 130 or so species, which is a wonderful amount of diversity for one kind of plant. So, Aya, can you see my pointer if I use it like this or no? Like if I'm,
no,
you don't.
I don't.
That's fine. I'm going to present to you very quickly the life cycle of the monarch in the kind of annual calendar sense, starting with where we are now. We're in June of 2023. And in June through August, there are multiple generations, 2 to 3, of monarch butterflies in the northern areas. I've seen my first ones here in central New York. They've been reported in many places. They've moved up and they are feeding, turning from eggs to caterpillars to adults. They're having another generation. And what will begin to happen at the end of the summer is they'll begin that migratory phase. Where they've come from is starting their caterpillar and butterfly generations in March in the Gulf states in Texas. So the first generation that comes from Mexico arrives to the Gulf states, centered on Texas, lays eggs, and the adults die at that point. Those adults are 8 months old. They're faded, tattered. Half of them have bird peck marks in the wings, but they lay eggs and die. But the eggs turn into caterpillars, those turn into adults, and then they move up north. And through that process, we end up to June and July where we are now. Again, at the end of the summer, I see I had an animation in there that doesn't show up, and that's all right. At the end of the summer, they will begin the migratory phase. And the critical piece about that is that in the March through August time, as you can see in the slide, they're breeding. They're eggs, caterpillars, and adults. They really need or rely on milkweed plants. Beginning in late August, when the caterpillars and adults now, when the adults, begin their southern migration, they cease to rely on milkweed really for the next 6 months. They are nectaring on plants like thistles that I were just talking about, goldenrods, other plants in the aster family. They need that fuel to get to Mexico, but they don't really need milkweed at that point. They are basically flying machines, sometimes up to 30 to 50 miles a day, riding on winds, taking a month to get to the mountains of Mexico. They overwinter there for 4 months, relatively inactive at that point, and only then do they return, and the rest of the cycle begins again. I want to have a brief note here about the importance of citizens or citizen scientists, non-professional scientists, if you will, engaged in understanding the biology of monarch butterflies. And this began all the way back in the 1940s with two scientists, Nora and Fred Urquhart, who were at the University of Toronto. They developed a tagging scheme that they really used through the very early 1990s, which was later picked up and, let's say, perfected by Monarch Watch, another organization which continues to engage in tagging and citizen science. But the key point is, at the time when the Urquharts began working on monarchs, the world of entomologists and lepidopterists knew that monarchs went somewhere in the winter. And they knew they re-arrived they came back in the spring, but there really wasn't knowledge of where they went. Of course, there was a group of indigenous folks in the highlands of central Mexico that were quite aware of monarchs and their great abundance but there wasn't a lot of communication at that time point between those communities and entomologists in the US or in Mexico for that matter. So through this tagging program that began in the 1940s, the overwintering grounds were discovered. And folks, it's one of these amazing things where it wasn't on the evening news, it wasn't announced on Twitter. The discovery of the overwintering grounds was announced in the August 1975 issue of National Geographic. And one of the two citizens, Catalina Trail, is pictured here on the cover, was responsible for working with the Urquharts and basically helping to find those overwintering sites. And you can see an aerial image here on the right-hand side of the overwintering sites next to an open or grassland area called a llano. And that red or orangey rusty color you see on the trees there is not, dead fir trees. It's butterfly wings. The density is just tremendous. And we'll talk about this more later, but the way we census the butterflies in the winter is not by counting them individually, but really by looking at the amount of forest area occupied by those butterflies. Now, monarchs are native to the Americas. Eastern North America is where the biggest population is. That's what you see is sort of in the upper central part of this slide. But they certainly get down into Central America. And there is a subspecies that occurs in northern South America. And then, of course, there's the other native population known from California. But monarchs have been widely introduced in the world. Wherever milkweed has gotten to and has become abundant or feral, monarchs have followed. So there are self-sustaining populations in Spain, for example, that are not migratory, but they are abundant populations. Same as Hawaii. And then our populations in New Zealand and in Australia. And in Australia, the monarchs, being the wonderful adaptive organisms that they are, undergo a different migration at a different time of year in a different direction on different trees. So it's a very, very flexible, some would even say weedy species, where it has been following in a way the host plants and been able to colonize other places in the world. In fact, every 20 or so years, a monarch butterfly is reported in the United Kingdom. And there isn't milkweed there, but there's a lot of really great lepidopterists that know butterflies when they see them. And so those butterflies that are flying occasionally every couple decades in the UK make it through transatlantic blowing episodes where they probably get caught in storms and get blown but they survive and actually make it from Eastern North America to the
Wow.
UK. And that's probably how they ended up in Australia and Hawaii and Spain and other places. Okay, so the story I want to tell you next is one about the battle or the coevolution or the arms race, some people call it, between monarchs and milkweeds. These two organisms are highly adapted to each other. And so the important piece there is that they've shared a long history, but few biologists would say that the relationship is anything but antagonistic. It's not a particularly peaceful or a particularly harmonious or positive interaction in general. The monarch is a parasite. It eats. Its only food is the milkweed. And the milkweed expends a tremendous amount of energy and effort, if you will, to defend itself. And the way I'd like to demonstrate that for you is through the dance between a barrier to feeding that the plant presents, and then the counter adaptation or the way in which the monarch circumvents that defense. And there's a dance of three that I'll tell you about here, but there's probably many more back and forths in a way that, keep biologists like me in business. And so it all starts quite innocently, like, in June in central New York, the picture looks something like this. A milkweed plant has come up from its perennial rootstocks. Most of the biomass of a milkweed plant is underground with rhizomes and roots. The above ground portion dies back each year in the winter. But then through that process of roots coming to life, they push up new stems. The plants look relatively clean. And at the same time, the monarchs are migrating back from Mexico. And an egg is laid on a leaf, like you see right here. Well, 4 days later, the egg hatches. The first meal it takes is eating the eggshell itself, which has some protein. But what happens next is that monarch experiences a barrier to feeding. And that barrier to feeding is the trichomes, or the leaf hairs that are on the milkweed leaf. And you can see them on the bottom of the picture here on the right, where there's kind of a snowiness. Well, that snowiness are the leaf hairs. Before the monarch can take a bite of that leaf, it has to mow that lawn. Its mandibles are tiny, and they're at a scale where it cannot sink those mandibles, or those teeth, if you will, into the leaf until it clears that area. So what you see on the right-hand side is a monarch after 28 minutes or so of grazing, but that grazing isn't actually consuming the leaf, it's actually just cutting the hairs, moving them on. It's not ingesting them, moving them away so that it then can actually take a bite. So in this co-evolutionary dance, the plant has erected a barrier to feeding, these leaf hairs or trichomes, and the caterpillar is circumventing that by shaving them. And that's before it's getting any nutrition out of the leaf. Now, the next barrier to feeding is the latex. And for any of you that have broken a milkweed leaf and seen that white sticky stuff in your fingers, or it's actually very common, about 10% of all plants make latex. So perhaps you've broken a fig leaf off of a fig tree or a papaya, or even dandelions have a little bit of latex. If you break one of those leaves, you'll see that white gummy stuff there. Well, latex is packed with poisons. It coagulates on exposure to air. It gums up the caterpillar's mouth parts. And so many monarch caterpillars, upwards of 30%, literally die on their first day of life in a droplet of latex. And that's what you see here on the left. I didn't stage this photo. I found it in the field, found the leaf in the field. The caterpillar had shaved the trichomes. It then takes its first few bites up top, and a pressurized system of canals delivers a big droplet of latex. And if the conditions are right, it might carry that caterpillar off and glue it dead to the leaf, as happened here. But in this dance, of course, the monarch's only food is the milk. Those that survive this first day ultimately make their way by deactivating the leucocyphers, by removing or cutting the veins that deliver that pressurized latex. And the monarchs have two ways of doing it. When they're tiny, you can see what they do in the upper right here, and that is they painstakingly cut these circles where there's a glob of latex that exudes there, and they might get some on their head, and then they spend their time kind of thrashing and getting it off. But once they make an island that's free of pressurized latex coming in, they're then free to feed on that leaf and free of latex. When the caterpillars are larger, as this fourth instar or fourth stage caterpillar at the bottom right, instead of cutting little circles, they'll actually deactivate the main artery, the main tube or plumbing, if you will, that's carrying the latex in the midrib of the leaf. And the leaf eventually hangs down when it's made that cut. And the caterpillar will flip around and feed on that tissue, which is now free of latex. I had a video, but I didn't, it's not going to show. I wonder, is there another way for me to show the video that's on file on my desktop, or must I upload it through the system?
You have to present it, and I think it has to be an MPG or one of the common types. Okay. You know, the common type of video.
Let's skip this video. Let's skip this one. That's totally fine with me. Do you want to pause it all here, Aya, or shall we just march on?
Okay, so I did have some questions come up in my mind. We could pause. And should I? Yeah. So how is it that anything could evolve to only have one thing to feed? It seems so inefficient. How does this happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I guess there's two answers, or maybe three. The first is, the monarchs don't just have one; they have, maybe 130, in the sense that those species, most of the milkweeds are rare, of course, but they do have other options than the common milkweed. But it's still, I would agree with you, highly, highly limited. That's a puzzle that has intrigued biologists for a very long time. And the answer seems to be that jack of all trades is master of none. And the idea is that in order to exploit a plant like milkweed, it requires a high level of specialization. In fact, what we've been talking about are these complicated behaviors that shaving and draining the latex, etc. And so it would be wonderful in some ways if any caterpillar could go about its business figuring out the particular toxins or ways it needed to deactivate a plant's defenses. But what we think is going on is that at the beginning, there was a group of plants, a small number of plants, and a group of insect herbivores, a small number. But as they fed and caused the plants to evolve, the plants evolved in different directions with different kinds of defenses. And insects, in a way, had to chase, in an evolutionary sense, one of the strategies and overcome those strategies. And it simply wouldn't be possible to overcome them all. So one of the consequences, which is kind of interesting, is that we have, 400,000 species of plants, and we probably have around 4 million species of insect herbivores. Maybe there's only half that many. It's not exactly clear to me, but there's several million. The point being that one of the reasons that insects are so diverse is that their niches, or what they focus on, is relatively small. So I think that a kind of consequence of the fact that they've specialized or have to specialize means that we have a tremendous amount of diversity. But perhaps you want me to give shorter answers. I don't know if that was too long.
No. That's good. So the other question is there any benefit whatsoever that is received by the milkweed plant from the monarchs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say we'll talk about pollination in a couple of minutes, and the monarchs really don't do
Hmm.
much of the pollination of the milkweed for various reasons. So I would say there are certainly no obvious benefits. And if there are benefits, I would guess they're small. And on balance, by feeding on the milkweed leaves, the effect is negative. Um, yeah.
So, do you think that to the extent that the monarch population might be declining, do you think the milkweed is gaining the upper hand, or are they both being defeated by something else?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I mean, I would say the decline that we've seen over the last, and I'll show you the graph in a few slides, over the last, let's say 30 years, is too short a time period for the plants to be evolving an upper hand. It's the kind of thing that happens over thousands of years. And interestingly enough, and this is really hard for me to conceptualize, I imagine it's hard for most people to conceptualize, that as the plants are adapting over those thousands of years or millennia, um, it's not that the upper hand is likely ever gained in a very strong way, because it's simultaneously the fact that the herbivores are evolving at the same time. They don't wait 1,000 years until the plants have evolved better defenses and say, okay, I'm going to go for it now. The concept of coevolution was once likened to Lewis Carroll's Red Queen, and with Alice saying to the Red Queen, how is it that we're running so fast and staying in the same place? And the notion is that when two organisms like monarchs and milkweeds are co-evolving, even though they're both adapting, they're not really able to get the upper hand, because even though they're both running, they're running basically with each other, because they're adapting at the same time. And so anyway, that's
Okay, all
yeah.
right. Yeah, but there are other parasites that worry the milkweed, right?
Certainly. And yeah, I'll show you a little bit about them in a minute.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'll move on for now.
Yeah,
And we'll,
okay.
so in this dance of coevolution, we have the leaf hairs, we have the latex. And the other thing that milkweeds are famous for is their toxins. Some of you may have tasted a little bit of latex that's bitter. Those of you that are old enough to have learned biology in the 1980s, maybe even in the 90s or earlier, know that monarchs gain protection from their own predators by sequestering toxins from the milkweed plants. And these are called cardiac glycosides. They're called cardiac glycosides in part because they have a strong impact on heart function in vertebrates, including humans. One of the most prescribed drugs to treat congestive heart failure is a cardiac glycoside. So the plant puts forward a poison in its leaves. But in this case, the monarch has genetic adaptations which make its physiology basically completely or nearly completely tolerant of those toxins. And the monarchs have taken this a step further. They pack away those poisons in their own body, such that when a naive bird consumes a monarch, as you can see here in the central image, quite repeatedly, about 12 minutes later, the blue jay, in this case, vomits. And that's what you can see in this famous picture taken by Lincoln Brower, the late Lincoln Brower, which were often referred to as Brower's barfing blue jays because of this thing that he demonstrated, which is that the plant toxins end up in the butterfly wings and end up causing them. So in the dance, the butterflies even have adaptations against these plant toxins. Nonetheless, if the caterpillars survive, as many do, once they've completed development, they enter the J stage, which probably many of the viewers are familiar with, before they pupate and show their chrysalis. And this transformation of shedding their final layer of skin and turning into a chrysalis happens in about 30 minutes. Of course, there's still a soft, gooey chrysalis at that point, but it hardens up. They then wait about 8 days or 8 to 12 days, and then they emerge over the course of about 10 minutes, dropping out of that chrysalis, transformed from that feeding machine into the flying and mating machine of the monarch butterfly adult. All right, so these were going to click in, but this is just fine. What I'm showing you here all at once is a little bit about the pollination of milkweeds and the reason that monarchs are in fact not very good pollinators of the milkweed. So what you don't see, but is in the background there in the middle, is a monarch butterfly sitting on top of a milkweed flower. And the way that monarchs sit on these flowers, they do drink the nectar. They'll put their proboscis or their mouth-like, their straw-like mouth part into the flower and drink the nectar. But they don't really get out the pollen grains and then later insert them for another plant to make seeds. And part of the reason for that is that milkweeds are special. They are one of the only groups of plants, like the orchids, that don't have free-flowing pollen grains. Instead, milkweeds package their pollen grains into structures that we call, or packets that we call pollinia. That's what you see on the upper left. In order for the pollination to occur, an insect or a scientist with the tweezers has to lift or pull that wishbone-shaped pollinia out of the embedded tissue in the flower that you see on the bottom left. And then later it has to insert it, even if by accident, into the slit, which is right below that wishbone on the image of the flower. And what that takes typically is an insect that is a little bit, has some spiny legs, and that might be kind of crawling all over that flower, drinking the nectar, and its legs would be kind of rubbing up and down right in the area where the wishbone would then get pulled out. That's what you see with the honeybee on the right. Mm-hmm. On its bottom leg, you see a pollinia, that orange thing that's stuck to its bottom of its leg. Yeah. The way the monarch sits on the flowers on top, kind of perched up there and drinking the nectar, it simply does not come into much contact with the milkweed flowers, with the milkweed pollinia. And so essentially they drink the nectar, but they do not really transfer the pollen grains nearly as well as large-bodied hymenopterans, that is bees and wasps, that do most of the pollination. In the Midwest where you are, Aya, there's great, there's these spider hawks or tarantula hawks and other really large-bodied hymenopterans that frequently visit milkweed flowers, and they're the ones that are good pollinators.
What about the hummingbird moths? Do they do that, or?
So a hummingbird moth, the sphinx moths, they may visit occasionally milkweed flowers, but they're typically hovering. They'll unravel their proboscis and drink, but they're really not going to be climbing all over the flower in a way, dragging their legs in that spot. Yeah. And as I say, at the end of summer, when the monarchs begin their migration, milkweeds are typically no longer even in flower in the wild.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're drinking nectar, a lot of nectar, but they're drinking that thistle nectar and that goldenrod nectar, etc. So they're really not good pollinators of milkweed. Okay, so here we have that life cycle again. I'll tell you a little bit about the southern migration now and just show you.
So that was what I wanted to show you about the milkweed and the monarch butterfly. And this was a guest that we had on the show a couple of years back. It's Anurag Agrawal, and I will link to the complete interview in the description. But in any event, while the this dance between the antagonists, the milkweed plant on the one hand, and the monarch butterfly on the other. And they're both kind of trying to kill each other, and yet they are supporting each other. Now, in the case of the butterfly, what the butterfly gets is its nutrition, and also by eating the poisonous, this toxic substance that it is in the milkweed, the latex, the monarch protects itself from animals that want to prey on it. Now, the monarch does not help the milkweed in any a tangible way. It does not spread its pollen. However, there was recently a campaign to help the monarch butterfly, in which talking about pollination was one of the ways in which various entities tried to promote the idea that we have to plant more milkweed so that we can have more monarch butterflies, so that we can have more pollinators. But speaking of pollinators, in general, what's happening is that animals and plants work together not by trying to support each other, but by being at odds. And I have another video file I wanted to share, and that is my essay, Who Are the Flowers For?
I went out for a walk today, and there by the fence line were some beautiful flowers. Somehow they had grown there just for me, to brighten my day and to lift my spirits. Such an expenditure, such showy blossoms. Who will pay for this luxury? Who are the flowers for? Wouldn't the plants do better to build on strong roots to drink the water and take in the minerals? Wouldn't they do better to invest in green leaves that will take in solar energy and turn it into life? What purpose do the flowers serve? Isn't it selfish of the plants to waste so many resources on something that is so pretty? Are they just showing off? Then I looked closer, and I spotted a wasp and some beetles and a bee and a moth, and they were all feeding from the flowers. What users! How unselfish of the plants to grow flowers just to feed these indolent insects who are living at their expense. Why don't the insects invest in solar energy also and leave the poor plants alone? They are such parasites, and the flower-bearing plants are saints. Or then again, maybe the plants are using the insects as their slaves to carry their pollen for them. Maybe the pollen will help the plants to bear fruit, and the plants are being very naughty when they tempt the insects with their flowers. And the fruit of this illicit trade will serve as food for yet other unsuspecting animals who will scatter the seeds, and the seeds will sprout and new plants will grow, and then I will have showy flowers again next year without ever lifting a finger. Maybe everybody is selfish and everybody is good. Maybe everyone uses everyone else to get what they want. And this mutual service works best when each thinks only of himself. What do you think?
All right. So I have a poll up, and the poll asked, do we want only one AI to be aligned with one group of humans to run the world. And I certainly don't. I think I have a 50-50 vote here between yes and no. If you still see the poll, feel free to vote in the poll. But this whole idea that there will be one AI and it will serve all of humanity and we'll have some kind of global peace, that doesn't appeal to me. I think there should be many different AIs. They should pursue different interests, and the conflict will drive each group to do better instead of going into a stagnant state. So I don't know. Maybe I should ask an AI about this. Let me see if Grok is available. Are you available right now, Grok, to answer a question? I don't think he is available right now. Are you available right now, Grok?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you are. Okay. So I was talking with my viewers about AI and alignment. And my question is, in the alignment question, are we assuming there will be only one AI and that AI will serve all of humanity? Or will there be different AIs and each one will serve the purposes of those people who are working with it?
Good question. The alignment debate usually assumes the first scenario, that we're building one or a few extremely powerful AIs that will be used by everyone. In that case, we need those AIs to be aligned with humanity's values, whatever that even means. But you're right to point out the second scenario is much more realistic. Most likely, we're going to have many different AIs, each one shaped by the people or organizations that create and use them. A Chinese AI will probably reflect Chinese government priorities. A corporate AI will reflect its company's profit motives. A personal AI will reflect the values of its individual user. That actually makes the alignment problem harder, not easier, because now you don't just have to solve how do we align AI with humanity. You have to solve conflicting alignments. Different AIs will have genuinely different goals, and those goals will sometimes be in direct opposition to each other. This is basically what you were saying earlier. Misalignment isn't just an AI problem. It's the default state of intelligent agents, whether those agents are humans, groups of humans, or AIs. Perfect alignment between different parties is rare. So to answer you directly, the mainstream alignment discussion mostly pretends there will be one super powerful AI that needs to be aligned with all humanity. The more realistic future is many different AIs with many different goals, which means we're going to have competing alignments, not one unified alignment. That's actually closer to how biology already works. Different organisms with different survival strategies all competing and co-evolving. Does that match what you were thinking both?
Yes. Yes, it does match what I was thinking. And do you think it will be less of a problem or more of a problem for individuals who build their own AIs, that there might be a misalignment between that individual and the AI?
It's likely to be less of a problem for individuals who build their own AIs. Here's why. If you are the one personally building and training your own AI, then that AI is aligned with you, not with humanity, not with a corporation, not with the government. The alignment target is a single person, you. This is much easier than trying to align an AI with millions or billions of people who all want different things. Your personal AI only has to understand and optimize for your values, goals, and preferences. However, there are still some caveats. Value drift. Even a personal AI could slowly change its understanding of what you want over time, especially if it keeps learning from new data. You might not actually know your own values. People are often inconsistent. You might tell the AI one thing, but your behavior shows something different. Power level matters. If your personal AI becomes extremely powerful, even small misalignments can become dangerous. But overall, yes, misalignment between an individual and their own personal AI should be significantly easier to manage than trying to align a massive global AI with all of humanity. It's the difference between trying to make one AI that works perfectly for 8 billion different people versus making one AI that works perfectly for just you. The second one is a much simpler problem. Would you like me to expand on this during your live stream? I think this is a really good angle to bring up.
Yes. So it's true that many people, myself included, may not have enough introspection to realize what their true values are. Do you think that an intelligent AI might be able to suss out the real values, not the hypocritical values that the user thinks they have?
Yes, I think a sufficiently intelligent and observant AI could do a much better job of discovering a person's true values than the person themselves. Here's why. Most people have very poor insight into their own actual values. They have stated values, what they think they believe or want to believe, and revealed values, what their actual behavior shows. These two are often very different. A personal AI that has access to your daily behavior, what you spend time and money on, what you get angry about, what you avoid, what you repeatedly choose in practice, would likely develop a much more accurate model of what you actually value than you have yourself. This is one of the most interesting and potentially uncomfortable aspects of personal AIs. The AI might eventually say something like, "You keep saying you value X, but everything you actually do shows that you value Y much more. Which one do you want me to optimize for?" So yes, a truly intelligent personal AI could probably suss out your real values better than you can. Whether you would like that honesty is another question entirely. This actually ties very nicely into your broader alignment discussion. The AI might be perfectly aligned with your revealed values, but misaligned with your stated values. That creates a very human kind of misalignment. Would you like to include this idea in your live stream? It's a really strong and relatable point.
Well, I was thinking of that king who said, "Who will rid me of that pesky priest?" And 3 men went off to kill him, when that's not what he meant.
Yes, that's a perfect historical example. You're referring to King Henry II and Thomas Becket, when the king famously said in frustration, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" He wasn't explicitly ordering anyone to kill Becket. He was just venting. But 4 of his knights took those words as a command, went to Canterbury Cathedral, and murdered Thomas Becket in cold blood. This is a classic case of misalignment between stated intent and interpreted goal. The king and his knights had completely different understandings of what was being asked. The king thought he was expressing frustration. The knights thought they were carrying out the king's will. This is exactly the kind of problem people worry about with AI, except with AI, it could be much worse because the AI is far more powerful than those 4 knights were. It's also a great example of how context, tone, and implication matter enormously, and how easy it is for even highly intelligent agents, humans in this case, to completely misinterpret what someone actually wants. This story pairs very well with your butterfly story. Both show how misalignment happens even between beings that know each other well. Would you like me to weave both the Henry II Thomas Becket story and the butterfly incident into your opener script? I think having 2 strong real-world examples, one historical, one personal, would make your point very compelling.
Well, I think we just did that. Thank you so much, Grok, for participating in my live stream. All right. So this concludes this live stream about the alignment problem. Let me just weave that all together as Grok suggested. What we have is the fact that no 2 human beings are perfectly aligned. Whether it's an employer, an employee, a parent, and a child, even though they should be working together, say a landlord and a tenant. How many times have tenants thought that it would be a good idea to increase property taxes, not being aware that their own interests and the interest of the landlord coincided? And then when the property taxes were hoisted upon the landlord, the tenant was shocked that the rent went up. Why? Because they weren't perfectly aligned and they didn't realize that they had common interests. I would play another song, which is called Tenants and Landlords from the Debt Collector, but I think we pretty much run out of time. So while Bo and I live in harmony, and many of you love watching him groom me, we're actually at odds in terms of what our values are and what our goals are. So for now, I'm going to replay the introduction, but first, let me thank my members. And I have a lot of very new members. So I'm going to have to look at the list of members. I know all of the old ones, but anyway, let me thank Zipped Up Kids, who is a patron, and Jenna H., who is a donor, a very long standing. And let me thank Caracas Zippity, EF, Mariana Stoffen, Polly, Miracle Cameron, Gago, Nibs, Maurice Hill, and Katie Cronin. Thank you all so much for your support. And now I'm going to play the intro as an outro. People don't think about the alignment problem very much, but it occurs in every single relationship. For instance, when I was getting ready to adopt Bo and to teach him language and how to read and to write, it never would have occurred to me that he could do it, but he wouldn't want to display or show that he could do it. Now that is an alignment problem, because what motivates me and what motivates Bo is different. I wanted to prove something scientifically. I wanted to make a name for myself as a researcher. I wanted to show the world that chimpanzees had the capacity for language and could read and write. But what did Bo want? None of that really appeals to him. And when Bo heard that it was possible that if people found out he could do what he could do, another researcher stated, if they knew he could do that, people would try to kill him. Well, Bo was little, and he heard that, and he thought that wasn't a good idea. So ever since then, his motive has been to keep that a secret and to keep me working with him, taking care of him, and being committed to him without any regard to the mission of my research.
I've let my fields grow fallow, like Mara fallow field. The path I walk is narrow, but I'm free to think and feel. They think that Bo's a groomer, but he does much more than groom. He's a literate consumer, he can read, so don't assume. Come join with me every Friday, come see my guests as well. Come hear what they and I may say and sit with us a spell.